This recording will cover Chapter 8 in your textbook, Written Language, Strategies, and Techniques. So remember, as we're getting again into these later chapters that are called, strategies and techniques, make sure you are looking at the chapter, looking at your textbook to where they will go into much more detail than I'm going to do, okay? They do a better job of it. They have more time, so make sure that you're going back to your textbook and looking and really diving into some of these strategies and techniques, especially if there's students, that you're working with that maybe are struggling with written language. There might be some strategies, hopefully, that's why we chose this textbook, but hopefully some of the strategies that the authors talk about will be helpful to you. Okay, so here are our learning objectives for this strategy, or for this chapter, excuse me. Thinking about kind of what we've talked about in some of our past chapters, common problems that students with HI might encounter in written language, teaching handwriting skills, strategies to teach spelling skills, and teaching writing techniques and strategies to students with high incidence. I have to say, I personally have terrible handwriting. I write like a left-handed person. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I am right-handed, and so I write backwards to the point where my students that I used to teach in Charleston with autism and learning disabilities, they would laugh at my handwriting. True story, that's kind of how bad it is. So just a little fun fact about me and my bad handwriting. So we're going to talk a little bit about the process of written language, the product versus, there's a mosquito in my office and I guarantee you it's going to bite me. Product versus process. I just like you all to know what I'm dealing with as I'm recording. You're welcome. No, I'm just kidding. The Hays flower model, and then thinking about planning, translating, and reviewing. Okay, so product versus process. A product approach would be an approach to writing in which generating the product, whether it's an essay, composition, whatever it is the main goal, and it is usually written, proofread, and corrected kind of all at the same time, right? So doing everything all at once. Whereas the process approach is more an approach to writing in which a product is generated in stages that include planning, drafting, revising, editing, and sharing, publishing. Just from what I just said, which one do you think might be a better way to go with students with high incidence disabilities? Product approach or process? I'm hoping that you said process, right? Where we're going kind of stage by stage, okay? Do they need to have a perfect draft? No, not really, not in my opinion, right? That's the whole point of the writing process, okay? So the Hays flower method is one method. I have to be honest, I never used this model. This is not something that I was familiar with when I was a teacher, so you all might know it more than I do. So this is emphasis on working memory. We've talked about that a lot for our students with high incidence disabilities and the struggles they might have in their working memory. Incorporates visual, spatial, and linguistic components, motivation, affect, how are they feeling about writing as factors that influence writing, rearranges text interpretation, has reflection replacing planning. So after they get to the stage where they have, a draft or something done, then they really need to reflect on it. And subsumes translation under text production. Just look at your textbook for more information about that. I'm not even going to pretend that I know about it because I don't. I never used it, so I don't want to sit up here and say, oh yeah, you can use it this way. You might use it, you might not. It's just one model or one method. Okay, and we also want to think about the task, the environment and the individual component. So going back to the process, again, remember the process approach is product is generated in stages that includes planning, drafting, revising, editing, and sharing, publishing. So planning is the generating ideas, organizing ideas, setting goals, translating, taking ideas, translating them into sentences and paragraphs, and reviewing, evaluating, and revising writing. For some of your students who might be kind of more involved with some high incidence disabilities, maybe we're going to start with pictures. Maybe we're going to start with beginning, middle, and end. I think I talked about that oh my gosh, I'm trying to get this bug, people. Trying to, I talked about that in the last chapter, thinking about just beginning, middle, and end. Okay, let's plan what's going to happen in the beginning of your story. And maybe their beginning is only a sentence or only a picture, right, at first. And then we're going to translate and work on building our sentences and building our paragraphs. But for some of your students, especially your younger ones, they're not going to start right off with sentences and paragraphs, right? The evaluating, the revising, that's going to take time also, and that should be, under direct instruction and explicit instruction from you or from another adult in the classroom. So planning, the first part of the writing process, it is dedicated to generating ideas, organizing ideas, and setting goals. Oh, it says it right there. Translating, I have a little bit of extra information, is the second phase of the writing process. Text generation and transcription is used to translate ideas into oral language. Okay, so whether it's maybe a student or maybe an adult who is helping with the transcription part of getting out, getting their ideas, what they share with you orally, getting it down on paper. So again, that might be an adult helping out. That might be a higher functioning peer helping out. It might be something like that at the beginning, especially. And then transcription of these oral ideas into written text. Okay, and then reviewing is, again, the last phase of the writing process, so students evaluate and revise their writing. So these are not going to happen, in a day, and they're going to, oh, we planned it. Oh, okay, tomorrow we're going to translate it. Oh, tomorrow we're going to review it. No, it's going to take days, maybe weeks for some of your students. So problems with the writing skills, there's a whole bunch of issues that could be happening, right? It could be physical handwriting issues, okay? So those lower order mechanical problems. Maybe you have a student with some pretty significant occupational therapy needs, and writing might be hard for them. Like I told y'all, I write like a left-handed person. So I hold it in between my first finger and my middle finger on my right hand, and I have a big indentation on my middle finger where I kind of squeeze the pen, and then I kind of stab my finger with my thumb and kind of turn my hand backwards and write. So as I write, I kind of smear my right pinky across everything I've just written. Okay, so that is a terrible mechanical problem. I was just nobody ever corrected it because, I was legible enough and I did fine, so nobody ever corrected me. So some of your students might have some of those occupational therapy issues or some actual handwriting issues, but then they also might have some more of those strategic problems, some of those higher level, organizing their thoughts. What do we want to start with? What's the beginning? What's the middle? Stuff like that. Okay, so we also want to think about handwriting as part of the curriculum for, teaching children how to write manuscript and cursive letters. I don't know who uses cursive anymore, but it is a lost art, I feel. So we also want to think about how we're asking our students to handwrite. How are we asking them to take notes? Is it farpoint copying, which is recording information from the board, overhead, or whiteboard, so you would write on the whiteboard, the overhead, whatever, and a student would record lecture notes from the blackboard or overhead or whiteboard, whatever you want to call it, into his or her notebook at his or her desk. So that's far away, right? Typically the whiteboards may be up in the front of the room or on the side, and the students are at their individual desks. Might be challenging for some of your students to go kind of from point A that far away to point B right in front of them. Excuse me. Near point copying is exactly what it sounds like. Recording or copying information that is within close proximity to where it is recorded. So a student might record notes. I maybe swallowed the bug. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't really. A student who records notes from another notebook that might be on his or her desk, and they're just kind of transposing it into their own notebook. Okay, so that might be easier. You want to make sure your students have, very clearly lined paper, stuff like that. Some of them might need a little slant for their handwriting, a little slant like a binder, that you just tape a piece of paper to, so it gives them kind of a little bit of an angle. But that's where an occupational therapist could come in if you have some students with those motor skills. Backward chaining, breaking down a skill into sub-steps, or smaller steps, until a student is able to master each step, beginning with the last step. Okay, so thinking about kind of task analysis, breaking stuff down. Distributed practice, practicing content or skills over a long period of time, again, so throughout the week and in short sessions, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, okay? So again, we're not just gonna have them do this once and then be done with it. No, we want to distribute that practice. So some spelling skills and strategies, again, go to your textbook. They have a lot more information than I do. Class-wide peer tutoring, we've talked about that a little bit, kind of pairing up your students. Analogy techniques, spelling packages, sometimes there are spelling curriculums that you have to use. And they might, might be a spelling list or a spelling book or something like that. 5-step word study strategy. That is, am not 100% positive what that is because I don't have it right in front of me. Go to your textbook. You're welcome. And then visual imagery. So thinking about, relating visuals with images with the spelling word. And I could come up with this 5-step word strategy, but I'm just going to keep on moving because you can go to your textbook. Okay, some other skills and strategies for students for spelling. You could assess the unit size. Sometimes spelling lists are like 20 words long, right? That is way too long for some of your students. Maybe think about groups of 3 or groups of 5. How can you break this down into a more manageable amount for these students? Again, keeping in mind their working memory, they're probably struggling with their working memory. They're probably struggling with that short-term memory. So how can you design the spelling unit to better meet their needs? Okay, also thinking about considering distributed practice, right? Don't just show them a spelling word once or twice and then assume they have it and that they will have it for the rest of their lives. No, they need a lot of practice, a lot of feedback. You could help develop your own spelling list, kind of look at the content or the curriculum and develop your own spelling list of words that might be relevant to them. Okay, there's also computer assisted instruction, of course. So thinking about how computers might work for some of these students or, might be beneficial. Some study techniques for spelling, again, class-wide peer tutoring, copy, cover, I always say, I said it right, copy, cover, and compare. I feel I always say it wrong. That is an instructional approach in which students would check the spelling of the word by saying it aloud while looking closely at the letters, copy the word from their list, cover the word with a card, or you can fold over the paper as well, and write the word from memory, and then compare the second spelling of the word against the word list to check its accuracy. So this has also been used in Math Facts. So some of you may have seen this strategy, copy, cover, compare. That's how I've used it in Math Facts, but it is certainly usable, if that's a word, in spelling as well. Okay, 5-step word strategy. Here you go. You ready? See, I knew it was coming. Say the word, write and say the word, check the word, trace and say the word. I know sand letters, sandpaper, shaving cream, all of those things, whatever your students can tolerate, because some of them might say, ooh, no, I do not like the texture of shaving cream. So if we know that they don't like the texture, are you going to make them trace a word in shaving cream? Hopefully not, right? There are other ways that they could trace and say the word. Use a highlighter. That's what one of my student teachers just did. They were, it was a kindergarten class, and they were practicing writing the number 8. So she allowed them to use a highlighter. And then also write the word from memory and check. So there's your 5-step word study strategy. Okay, visual imagery. Again, we kind of talked about this. Look at the spelling. So I was a little bit wrong. Close your eyes and imagine the word in your mind's eye. Name the letters from left to right with your inside voice, very clear and explicit, right? So not necessarily thinking of pictures or images, but thinking of images of the word, okay, and what it might look like. And then an instructional framework for teaching writing skills, strategies. So thinking about how are you going to teach writing skills? How are you going to teach them to compose sentences? Again, some of them you might need to start with phrases, then sentences, then paragraphs, then essays. And how are you going to progress monitor and check for their errors? Okay, so an instructional framework, again, we've talked about this a little bit. Planning, drafting, revising, editing, sharing, and publishing. And again, this is going to look different for your students than it might in a gen ed classroom, right? But try to give them the opportunity to share and publish if they want to, right? And publishing doesn't have to be, fancy, oh, we're going to send it to a publisher. But, maybe print it out on the computer, maybe allow them to color some of the pictures, maybe laminate it, maybe bookbind it, something like that, so they can feel proud of what they did also, like their gen ed peers are doing. And then some other strategies, there's some sentence writing strategies. So looking at more of sentence writing, please, paragraph writing strategy, essay planning, error monitoring, stuff like that. So all of those are some techniques and strategies for teaching students with high incidence disabilities. But again, go to your textbook to get more, and they do a nice job of providing examples, kind of how to use it kind of thing. So make sure that you are checking your textbook out. There are also some websites that I believe they share with you So I would check those out as well. All right, so this was chapter 8, written language, and I will see you back for chapter 9.